Hi, my name is Namitha Kapa of the Youth Advisory Board with the Children's Science Center. I'm a senior at Briarwoods High School in Loudoun County, and I'm here today to introduce you to Dr. Braun, who has joined us for our STEM Champion video series. This series highlights the diverse STEM community and the journey STEM champions have taken, allowing children and young adults to see what is achievable. Dr. Linda Braun is the Vice President of Photonics Solutions at CACI International, where she oversees the efforts of more than 90 scientists and engineers working on optical subsystems for communications, imaging, and sensing solutions. Dr. Braun has led the creation of some of the most advanced free space and deep space optical communication solutions available today. In 2018, Dr. Braun was the recipient of an Achievement Award from the Intelligence and National Security Alliance, INSA, a nonprofit, nonpartisan professional organization for public and private sector members of the U.S. intelligence community. During our conversation, Dr. Braun will discuss her background and career, as well as insights on the future of technology. Welcome, Dr. Braun.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So first off, you've had a very interesting and impactful career in STEM. Before we talk about your journey, could you tell me what you're currently doing at Photonic Solutions and describe your vice president role?
Sure, my pleasure. As Vice President of Photonic Solutions here at CACI, I oversee the effort of about 120 scientists and engineers working on optical systems, primarily for communications, imaging, and other sensing type solutions. Most of the work that we do is for the US government. And as such, in my role, I lead the organization with respect to its strategy and growth strategy for the overall division. In addition to setting the strategic direction, such as what technologies to invest in, what types of markets to pursue. I also oversee the staffing, and I have the overall responsibility for basically making money, the profit and loss responsibility for the organization. So that includes going after new business development and making sure that we execute on the programs in a cost efficient and timely manner.
Actually, yeah, that sounds very, very interesting. With that, could you describe like a typical day for you at CACI?
I would say that one of the things that's great about my position is there is no sort of quote unquote typical day, which is why my role is so exciting. One day we could be taking the hardware that we've designed and developed and built and putting it in, let's say, shock and vibe testing or thermal vac testing to make sure that it will perform according to the specifications in a space environment. And then the next day I could be meeting with either industry or US government partners to discuss what their mission needs are and how we can develop solutions to support them. So that's actually one of the things that I really like about my role and the technology that we have within the sector, because there is no sort of typical day. So every day is exciting, every day is different, and that keeps my job to me, for me, exciting and interesting.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Like as someone who I know a lot of students that sometimes struggle when you don't have like a typical day or like your day is not planned out. Like I think we're just so used to like routine, and especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, routines have gotten like all over the place.
That's right.
So how has COVID adapted your work life at CACI?
Well, I'm working from home today. I would say many people within the organization work from home at the beginning of the pandemic. Now I'm typically in 3-4 days a week and maybe 1 day a week from home. We have certainly all learned through this pandemic how to hold meetings and collaborate and make sure that we communicate better, remotely. much of the work that my organization does is still within a laboratory environment. And so many people are in every day or, 3 days a week, as I said, working in the lab to test and to build and to develop our solutions. But we have gotten very, very good at being able to do design work remotely and making sure that people have the tools and the resources they need to be able to work remotely.
That's great. I'm so glad that it's been able to adapt so well to the changing times and these unprecedented times, of course. Um, Going back to like not having a typical day, like does that sometimes create any challenges for you since you don't have like a set routine almost?
I think one of the keys to being successful in any career probably, but certainly in a technology field, is that you have to be willing to adapt and be flexible because the technology is always changing and always improving, and you always want to work on state of the art technologies and at the forefront of whatever discipline you choose. And so um, being able to be flexible and adapt and not have a typical day or a routine, I think is a skill that's important. And so, um, I just think that for me, it's a good thing because it keeps my career and my job interesting that there's not a typical day. But also overall, I think it's good for career advancement to be able to be flexible.
Yeah, 100%. I can definitely see that. And I think that's something that a lot of students have to get used to is like you're not going to always have a routine, especially between that transition from high school to whatever, if you're entering the workforce, if you're going to college. So I think that's a really great point. Thank you for sharing that with us. Um, Another question I have for you is, did you have a passion for technology when you were young? Was there like a pivotal moment or a personal experience when you said like, this is what I want to do?
I was always pretty good at math and science, and my father was an engineer, and my parents were very supportive of me going into a STEM career. And so I think because of those reasons, it was just sort of a natural progression for me to go into a technology STEM field. Um, I don't remember a pivotal moment, but I think it was just the overall culture within, my family dynamics with my dad being, as I said, an engineer.
Yeah, gotcha. I think that's really cool. As someone who's going into the STEM field as well, I'm going to be majoring in bio on the pre-med track. So I think that's really, really cool. I mean, both my parents are engineers, and I guess I am straying from the path a little bit because I just, yeah, but I think that's really, really cool. So were there any?
I, I understand not doing exactly what you wanted to. I'm a different kind of engineer than my dad was. I didn't want to be the same. I understand wanting to pursue your own path.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So were there any obstacles to pursuing your passions or challenges you faced?
you know, um, the number of female engineers today has greatly improved since the 1980s when I was in engineering school, when only about 6% of the students in the engineering college were women. But it's still surprisingly low even today. And I think some of the obstacles just were that there were very few female mentors. When you looked around the room, there were very few people that looked like you. There weren't as many of the support groups as I think there are now, but even now, it's not to the numbers that we would like it to be. And so, I think I had to work harder at networking and to have advocates for me to advance my career from external people. But I also had to learn to be my own supporter and my own advocate because there weren't as many of those, support groups and mentors back then. So I guess I would say, those were the obstacles. But in the end, you are always going to be your best, supporter and your biggest advocate. So it was a good lesson to learn, maybe right from the very beginning.
Yeah, that's great. And just thinking about the role of like mentorship when you're pursuing a career or pursuing your passion, was there any specific mentor in your life that has really helped you or helped you pursue your passion or guided you in a specific way?
You know, I always had very supportive bosses all along the way. So I wouldn't say that there was one person in particular, but I chose to accept positions where I knew I would have a supportive boss, and I think that that's um, a good lesson for people to learn, and good advice. You know, make sure that you move into a role where you feel like you're going to be supportive. So one particular mentor, no, but I always, as I said, try to pursue positions where I would have support from my boss or my, you know, my up the chain, my superiors.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great to hear. And just thinking about the how we want to be expanding the number of women in the STEM field and the women pursuing STEM careers. What do you think? Are there specific things you have in mind that we can do to help encourage women to pursue a career in STEM?
You know, I think getting people excited about science and technology from very young ages is important. You know, studies show that you lose girls and young girls early on. And once I think you lose them, it's hard to try to pull them back into a STEM field. So making it fun and encouraging girls and young women to go into a field and to show that there are role models of women that have been successful and that you can have a career and you can have a full work-life balance is important. And so I guess just encouraging from a very young age, showing that it can be done, having mentor programs, those are the kinds of things that I guess I would champion.
Yeah, and actually at the Children's Science Center, that's one of our biggest missions, inspiring a love for STEM at such a young age through interactive experiences, programs, and all of that. And so I'm just so glad to be a part of that. Yeah.
And making it fun, right? It doesn't have
Right.
to be, oh no, it was science, math,
Mhm.
whatever. Making it fun.
Right. I mean, like I remember in elementary school when I was a kid, like the most fun days of school were like when we were doing science experiments. But when we
Yeah,
didn't have a science experiment in class, it would just be like going through a PowerPoint. And so that's when you start to lose them. So,
right. And
right.
even if that experiment doesn't go well, right? Even if it goes all wrong, sometimes that's even more fun. So
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, yeah. Those like thinking back, it's just some of those science experiment days were probably one of the best days of elementary school, and I still remember them to this day. So it's very possible to inspire a passion for STEM. I just think it's a very there just needs to be a focus on more hands-on, kind of seeing it themselves rather than reading or like learning it from a book. You know what I'm saying?
right, hands on. Yep.
Exactly. And the next question I have for you is how do you anticipate or foresee changes needed in your industry? What excites you about the future of your industry? What concerns you?
So the industry that I primarily work in is photonics or optics, so optical engineering, and the insertion of optical solutions into US government applications in communications and in sensing is rapidly expanding and rapidly being deployed into mission critical applications. And so it's extremely exciting to be at the forefront of that. So my organization is developing state of the art technology, and the insertion of that technology really at the forefront into missions is just something that's great to be a part of and very exciting. Changes that are needed, you know, it, it, with with respect to technology and the timelines that it takes to develop those timelines are being compressed. And so the timeline from the idea, the development of the technology, to the insertion of that technology to solve various problems is being collapsed. And so speed to deployment is critical. So those are the changes that I see, especially in space. The timelines for deployment of technologies into space has really been being compressed. And so it really is faster, faster, go faster, develop the technologies faster on faster timelines and deploy them on faster timelines. One of the concerns, I guess, that I see, in the role that I have, staffing and hiring of qualified candidates is one of the roles that I have. I do have concerns about, a pipeline of qualified candidates and having enough students have a passion for STEM and go into various STEM technologies. Engineering and physics and chemistry and all of the different STEM fields. And so ensuring that we have that long-term pipeline of qualified candidates is one of my concerns.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so just off like the top of my head, I just think it's so fascinating. So when you are looking for people to join your team, what exactly what qualities are you looking for in candidates that make them stand out? Or yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we always want students that have a very strong technical background, right? And um, that is obviously important. You have to have that strong fundamental technical training and background. But being a critical thinker and having excellent communication skills is also, those are also things that we look for, because you can have the best idea in the world and you might be the most brilliant scientist or engineer in the world, but you're going to have to work in teams and you're going to have to get buy-in for your ideas and being able to communicate is important to the success of organizations, because you're rarely going to work solo alone. You're going to likely work in a team. And so communication is being able to communicate your ideas and express your thoughts is something that's also very important and something we look for.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So also thinking about like team building. So does CACI have a really big, or Photonic Solutions, do they have a really big focus on team building? Do you guys do team building activities often, or is there like how do you create a team that is so successful like the ones you have, like the one you have, especially when you have so many people, like you said you oversaw about 120 people.
Yeah, we do team building activities. Not typically as the entire organization, although sometimes, there are various activities, but the individual groups working on different programs do team building. And we try to make it a point to celebrate successes, because that makes the entire team feel good and recognize the successes of the individuals within that team, but also the team as a whole. So those are some of the kinds of things that we do, whether that's pizza parties or external gatherings or picnics or just celebrating the successes. Sometimes it's as simple as, somebody brings in homemade cookies to celebrate a milestone on a program. Sometimes there are financial rewards, like CACI has a program called WOW Awards. And so there are various activities and things that we do to try to team build. And I would say that most of it is around celebrating successes.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's great to hear. That's so interesting. The next question I have for you is, what was key in becoming knowledgeable about the industry you decided to pursue after earning degrees from Rutgers University?
Um, I think one of the things that's key is to always be willing to learn new things and to improve your skills. I've worked in optics, I've worked in material science type fields, I've worked in different fields over my career. And I was always willing to learn new things and accept that I didn't know everything. And so try to improve my skills, to take chances in my career, to ask for help when needed, and to keep an open mind about learning new things. I've been very fortunate in my career to work with technically excellent colleagues and to learn from them. And I think that that's good advice for anybody. Learn from the people around you, especially those that you respect technically and professionally.
Perfect. Yeah, and I love how you said you have to always be willing to learn and don't be afraid to ask questions. I think that's something that a lot of students struggle with. And so I love that you mentioned that. Yeah, of course. And so while you were talking about the all the other industries you've been involved with, what made you choose optics? Just out of curiosity.
Um, it was at a time in my career where I was looking for something new, and it was interesting and exciting and challenging, and it was not an area that I had worked in previously, so it was a way for me to challenge myself, and it was just a good opportunity for me. It's something that I guess I would say to young people. Like I thought I knew what I was going to do in my career when I was younger, and what path I would take. And my career is completely different than the path that when I was 20, if I hadn't mapped out my career and the path I would take, it is not the one that I ended up taking. So don't be afraid to, take on new challenges, and even work in things where maybe it's not exactly what you trained in, but you have that fundamental STEM education where it teaches you how to think critically about problems, how to think logically to solve problems. It will take you a long way, and it may not be the path that you originally envisioned, but it could be, it likely will be very exciting, and you'll learn new things all along the way.
Yeah, and with that, do you have any advice for students that may not exactly know what they're planning on pursuing in the future? I think that's like something a lot of high schoolers struggle with is just the concern of, oh, I don't know how to pick a major. I don't know what I want to study in high school. I'm like 16, like just
I
not
know.
sure, right? Like I just don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life. So do you have any
That's
students?
right. It's not,
Yeah,
that's right. It's not fair at 16 to have to pick what you're going to do for the rest of your life, but know that you don't have to necessarily. What I would say is pursue studying something that really interests you and something that you love. And then after you do that, strive to be the best at that, whatever that is, technical excellence, whatever that field is, and then be very open and willing to learn new things. Don't be afraid, right? Don't be afraid, and don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it. Believe in yourself. And as I said earlier, be a strong advocate for yourself. As long as you are doing something that interests you and that you love, you'll be successful. And there's no one right path or wrong path. And the path will meander likely over the course of your career.
gotcha. Yeah. Thank you so much. I think that was really helpful. Just as someone that's going to college myself soon, in like a couple months, I just think that's important to remember that not everything is always going to be set in stone, and to not be afraid to. I think that's something I have to work on, not to be afraid to step out of my comfort zone, stray away from, think outside of the box, and all of those great things that you've mentioned in this interview. Um,
Right. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to try new things. You never know. It might be, that might be your calling, even though you didn't know it when you started.
exactly, yeah. And so, just this is my last question for you. What advice do you just have in general? I kind of touched on this in the last question, but like, what advice do you have for young people just regarding their pursuit of a passion? Any general advice? You kind of covered it with the last question, but
Yeah, as I said, do what you love, do what interests you, and then just always be open to trying new things, and be a strong advocate for yourself.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Braun, for joining us today. I think I can speak on behalf of anyone that watches this interview that your advice was very, very helpful. You have a very impactful and interesting career, and you truly are an inspiration to women pursuing the STEM career and all of that. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure.